So, welcome everybody. We're going to look at building better relationships specifically for neurodivergent professionals. And just so you understand my perspective and experience as a neurodivergent professional myself, I've identified for almost a decade as a highly sensitive person. Recently, as in last month, diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and sort of recapping my whole life with that lens, there is also ADHD diagnosis in my immediate family as well. I know there are empaths in my family, and if I look back through my family as well, I can see the signs of autism there. So I am a loud and proud person around neurodivergency. You'll see I refer to it as neurospicy. That's in part because my heritage is part Indian and I like all things spicy. So when I heard the term neurospicy, I hope some of you like that. I know there's lots of different ways to refer to neurodivergency. We might say neurodistinct, neuroatypical. There are lots of different ways. And what I like to really highlight in my view of it, and when I'm talking to people in this space, is I really like to acknowledge that yes, there are challenges and struggles that come with a different way of being, but there are incredible insights, noticing, profound need to stand up and lobby for good things. And I think overall, I love to celebrate who we are and the range of experience that we bring. Sometimes it can be really difficult for neurodivergent people in a world that is not designed to really support all of us with the through line of sensitivity through many neurodivergent ways of being. It can be quite taxing. And so I think then, because of how taxing it is, it's really possible that we cannot show up at our best because of an environment that's in many ways toxic. And so part of what we want to talk about today is I'm going to talk about an overall attitude to hold. And if you are a neurodivergent leader, I would so love you to come on and share what you think about what I'm about to share, because I think we are in a place where we're managing ourselves and we need to figure that out. But we are also wonderful role models and can inspire. There was a podcast on the Happy Space podcast with Rick Brennan. I don't know, Raphael, you can probably look at the number and we can share that later. But there's a podcast with Rick Brennan who wrote a book called The Atypical Leader and really celebrates his neurodiversity as his strength in being a leader who was thinking and acting differently. He was having meetings with people for lunch regularly just to get to know people one-on-one, and he built incredibly solid relationships through that. And I urge you to have a listen to that on the Happy Space podcast. But I've pulled a bunch of information here for you to share. And like Raphael said, though, we are so open to your questions. And if you want to be anonymous, then simply pop a DM to Raphael. And the reason we're having you send it to Raphael is so that, number one, I do one thing at a time. Otherwise, I don't do anything well. And so that helps me focus on this conversation and thinking about all of you. It also will prevent me slipping up, multitasking, and perhaps revealing a name when you want to be considered anonymous. So if any anonymous requests, please send a DM to Raphael and he will ask your question for you. And even better though, join us up here on stage, put your hand up and we'll bring you into conversation. If we're talking, we'll just look for the opportune time, but don't worry, we'll see your hand raised and we are going to be so happy to hear from you and handle your questions. So the first thing I want to talk about is holding on to an attitude that really is helpful for anyone, but in particular, neurodivergent professionals. I call it the ask model. I'm going to take us from there into something really to do with self-awareness and cultivating more awareness about what conditions invite your best performance. I call that asking yourself through the work style profile. We're going to talk about that. And to talk also a little bit about making the ask, speaking up and self-advocating, but only lightly, because our next Fishbowl Live on June 12th is a deeper dive into speaking up for what you need. And as a neurodivergent person, as I said, identifying for almost a decade already as a highly sensitive person, I've had some hits and I've had some misses in the speaking up department, but I thought a lot about it and been researching it as well. So I have a lot to share on June 12th, 2 p.m., same time. Come meet us in 2 weeks and we'll kick that one off. I'll finish with talking about how we can be effective when we're asking others for what they need, because this is about, in our building better relationships, it's partly about self management, but it's also about making that safe space where other people can ask. And so there's a great time to hit another reminder to say, hey, put your hand up. Don't be shy. Jot a question down if you want, and then be ready to put your hand up and ask when you feel ready. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about the ask model. And the ask model is an invitation to stay in curiosity. And when we can stay in curiosity, it helps us learn more, but it helps us also keep our own biases in check and not make assumptions that may or may not be accurate. And so the ask model, I love fundamentally this invitation to stay in curiosity. And I landed on ask because when I was researching inclusivity for invisible challenges, I found some work in the US that identified a question that they recommend a leader ask their team if they want to invite someone to ask for what they need. And it's simply, what do you need to succeed? So that question and that whole ask, that question led to me breaking down ask a little bit into 3 steps. And so the ask word becomes anticipate, suggest, and know. Anticipate, suggest, and know. And anticipate, what do I mean by that? I mean, you already know something about yourself. You already know a lot about other people. And based on what you already understand, what can you anticipate you needing to be successful in your day? What can you anticipate somebody else needing to be more successful in the way that they're hoping to contribute? So, anticipate is the first step, suggest is the second step. Based on what you're anticipating, then, is there something that you could suggest? So, for example, we're running the transcript now because we're going to put this up in a blog post eventually, and we'll be able to have the transcript there because somebody might want to read. I love, love, love this Fishbowl audio platform. Absolutely love it. But there might be somebody who wants to recap this conversation and find out something juicy that was said and be able to access it in writing. And we want to make that available too. This is the same reason we're recording video right now as well. And so you'll be able to choose your medium, but come back to Fishbowl Live because this is where the content hit first. And this is where you get the only place you get to ask a question live. So anticipate, suggest, and the third element is know. Commit to better knowing yourself and each other. And with that drive, we can always then and know a little bit more, anticipate better, make better suggestions for solutions, know more, anticipate, and you guessed it, it's iterative. This ask model, you're always in this mindset. So I highly encourage you to really embrace curiosity in your relationships with others and of yourself. If something goes sideways, as many interactions do for everybody, instead of feeling less than and beating yourself up that something didn't go well, my invitation to you is to say, wow, I'd like for this to go better next time. What do I want to notice about how I showed up? What do I want to notice about how somebody else showed up? What was the environment challenging? What do you want? What can you observe that will help set you up better for success? So that's the ask model. And the other free tool that I want to bring your attention to is for self inquiry, first and foremost. And it's really designed to really go a little deeper than any other profile that I've seen on the market. This is free. I want everybody able to have it. And it's called the Happy Space Work Style Profile. It's a series of questions, takes about 15 minutes to complete, and it goes through things like, your chronicity. What time of day do you like to operate in? Is this your peak time, or is 2:30 Eastern time going to be nap time for you and you're feeling yourself waning? Maybe you're on the West Coast listening right now and you're thinking, this is my prime time, 11 in the morning, and things are rocking and rolling. So knowing when you work best is really important, and also knowing when you want to be available for work. I ask those kinds of questions. I ask about communication preferences, processing preferences. And this is very particular for neurodivergent people, to be really sensitive to what you need. Do you need transition time between events, for example, to be able to really think about what the next steps? Do you want really good wayfinding? So, for example, I'm going to let you know after I finish talking about this next slide, which you'll see if you watch the video. Raphael is going to what we call reset the room, which is he's going to remind you of what we're talking about, who I am, those kinds of things, and then we'll have more content. And as always, I'm looking to see if someone's raised their hand, and we're ready to be interrupted to take questions. So, that kind of wayfinding is an example of a processing preference and some guidance that a neurodivergent person might like in terms of what's coming. What do I want to expect in terms of time and space? And more information can sometimes be really helpful there. I talk about traits: introversion, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, our propensity to worry or not. Those kinds of things are needs to manage mind, body, and spirit in the section on well being, which includes ergonomics. And I don't know about you, but I'm like the princess and the pea. If there's something uncomfortable in my setup, it will get in my way, absolutely. So, well-being is there, and also our preferences around leadership in the way we work. But the most profound opportunity in this profile is the nuances necessary section. And in that nuances necessary section, there's a few questions that ask you questions about who's dependent on you. Is there any health or learning challenge that you want to translate into a need to succeed? And the goal here, first off, is that you develop ultimately a one-page summary. So if you do this profile, you get it's in a Google form, and you'll get an email from Google, and then you'll also get an email from me saying, "Here's a template. Please translate everything that came to you is really important to influencing how you work, and put that in that one page template." That's the work style profile, and that's what you can use as your own guide and also share with other people. So questionnaire, 15 minutes, turning it into the work style profile, 15 minutes, and then your big opportunity to build better relationships with others then comes through sharing with others this work style profile. So I'm going to break now and just give you an invitation to definitely send Raphael a DM if you'd like to raise a question anonymously, or put your hand up and let me know if there's something that you've observed about yourself and on your own journey that helps you have better relationships with others. Or is there a question? Is there something that's puzzling you and you want to work on something live? I'm happy to take that question. Raphael.
Okay, so quick reminder that this is Proactivity for Neurodivergent Professionals with Clare Kumar, experienced executive coach specializing in proactivity and inclusivity. Today we're talking about building better relationships and how neurodivergent employees who feel excluded can build a sense of belonging. Make sure to follow her in Fishbowl so you don't miss any talks in the series. And a little breaking here is that the episode that Claire mentioned previously was from the Happy Space podcast is episode 39, and it's called "Why We Need Atypical Neurodivergent Leaders" with Rick Brennan. So that's it.
Thanks so much, Raphael. Episode 39. And just in case you're curious, I have numerous interviews with like individuals like Peter Shankman, who's renowned entrepreneur and ADHD professional, Ludmila Preslova, who just wrote a brand new book, just came out in the beginning of May, called The Canary Code, all about neurodiversity at work. Theo Smith out of the UK, a podcast episode with him talking about the importance of language. An interesting conversation with Judy Singer, who's credited with creating the term neurodiversity. So lots there for neurodivergent professionals to dig in. Let me continue on a little bit now with this concept of we're talking about identifying what you need to do your best work, and then moving into making the ask to ask for what you need. And if we can ask for what we need, that sets us up better to be in relationship with others, because the more stress we're under, the harder it is to self-regulate. And that can definitely present some relationship challenges. If this is resonating with you and you want to share something about something that's happening at work, by all means, put up your hand, or just pop Raphael a DM and let him know your question. And if you'd rather stay anonymous, Raphael will take care of it for you. So making the ask, it's, you're already at no. You're already at a no if you don't ask the question. And so I encourage everyone to speak up as much as they can, but recognize at the same time, it can be so difficult. Depending on the environment you in, it can feel embarrassing. You can have a sense of feeling of failure or a lack of efficacy in feeling like you're supposed to be able to manage everything. There can be also an overwhelming drive to please others and asking for help. Especially in North American culture, we're not really modeled it very well. We're more told to suck it up, hustle, grit, uh, just and sacrifice yourself and just push through a lot. And that's not always a great recipe for someone who's neurodivergent. That can lead us more towards burnout and maybe even opting out. So it's really, really important for neurodivergent professionals to identify what they need to do their best work and to be able to articulate that. So I'm curious from you, I'm curious what kinds of things, what kinds of conditions you might want at work to help your performance. Myself, I know I needed, when my kids were small and still would need today, a lot of flexibility about where I work and when I work. And that's in large part why I'm an entrepreneur today. And finding now that there's much more flexibility depending on the organization. I'm curious, is there anyone out there right now thinking about a conversation around flexibility and figuring out how to speak up and ask for what you want? If you want to bounce anything around, I'm your guest, I'm your gal. So not only can it be difficult to speak up, it can be risky too, depending on the environment that you're in. And I'm not one to sugarcoat and say it's all going to be roses if you choose to speak up. There's a very real risk that no you're already at is where you stay. I've been there and it happened to me. But I've often tried to make things work so hard that by the time there's just no more ways to make it work. And by the time I'm ready to go, I'm really ready to go. If you listen to the first episode of the Happy Space podcast, you'll hear me recount my very hands-on learning of the fact that Birkenstocks and pantyhose don't mix. And if you're of the age where people wore pantyhose, I think they've pretty much gone the way of the dinosaur now, which is awesome. But they didn't work because they're super slippery together. The leather sole of the Birkenstock and the pantyhose, really bad mix. And I talk about tumbling down a flight of stairs one early rainy morning in November. And that was the big aha to me to say, you know what? You really need to make a change. And you've been trying to speak up and try and negotiate what you need, but really now your health and well-being is under too much threat here. You need to make a difference. So we're going to dig more into speaking up and how to speak up on Wednesday, June 12th at 2 p.m. in the very next Fishbowl Live. And I invite you to join me there. I want to share one piece that we're going to dive into more there. But one tidbit for you today is, if we're thinking about articulating what we need, often if we're feeling tired, frazzled, bullied, persecuted in some way, our brain can really send us into fight, flight, freeze, and shut down our ability to cognitively think really well and come up with a really lovely response. We react, we don't respond. And so, one tool you can have right now is I want you to notice how you're feeling and name it. One of the best things you can do is name the emotion you're feeling because that will calm you down. And when you get calmed down, then your prefrontal cortex can engage. And that's the executive part of the brain that can say, wow, this is really stressful. What do I want to do here? And you can go back into choice and mining through options and coming back to a response that you're really happy with and that you'll be proud of. I'll give you one example, okay? So I swim a lot, and in the summer I swim at a local pool outside. And in this beautiful 50-meter local pool, there are only 3 lanes across the width of the pool, and there are about 40 to 50 people trying to swim across the width of the pool. So you can imagine the bulk of swimmers have no guidance as to what straight looks like. And if you're swimming front crawl and somebody else is swimming front crawl and you're not popping your head out to get your bearings, concussions are very, very possible. And so I've been in that pool where twice in 2 weeks, the same gentleman jumped in across from me and didn't look where he was going. The first time I asked him, could you please pay attention and swim somewhere else? Because I'm here and I'm taking this spot. So please relocate yourself. The second time he did it, I'll have to tell you, building better relationships. Here's a story for this because I did not, at that point, I unleashed on this man. I yelled at the guards, please pay attention. This man is dangerous. Get him out of the pool. He needs to leave. I totally unleashed on him. And one example I think of, and I don't know about Will Smith's any kind of diagnosis or way of being, I sense he's a highly sensitive person. And I sensed that at the Oscars, when he had the altercation with Chris Rock, that he moved from one of the highest points in his life, winning the Oscar, to one of the lowest points in his life when he unleashed on Chris Rock. And that was that emotional dysregulation that we saw there that left him doing something that he wasn't proud of. So I want to leave you with that and invite you back again for the next conversation where we're going to dig deeper into the challenges and benefits of speaking up, but naming what you're feeling, and a deep breath. 2 powerful things you can do to calm yourself down. Raphael, do you notice any questions coming up or anything that you'd like to add?
We don't have any questions yet, and I'm figuring that people are waiting for the questions part at the end. But I do want to kind of like emphasize on the part of actually getting to understand neurodivergent employees, because it wasn't until I started working with you that I fit inside the neurodivergent, and I did my own test, and we even talked about it. I have a slight ADHD. I'm also an HSP, just like you. And I think that something that has caught my attention is how do like two HSPs manage to coexist in that same space? Like how I think that maybe it could be part of chemistry, but something that I think is good to emphasize is that since I understand my own boundaries and I have this, and we are in this spectrum, and you understand yours, we can actually, it's easier for us to talk about it and to literally ask others how are they doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you raise a good point, Raphael. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So Raphael and I have been working together since the beginning of February. And you're right. There is a potential for some volatility when 2 highly sensitive people could come together and potentially be emotionally reactive. And I think that always this journey of self-awareness, that's why I talk about it so much. The self-awareness piece is really the place to start to have better relationships with others. But then it's the perfect segue into the next part of what I want to talk about here, which is asking others. And how do we make it safe enough for others to speak up? And I remind you of that ask model that we talked about at the beginning. Anticipate, suggest, and know, and say, what do you need to succeed? What will make you be most comfortable? So Raphael and I, for example, have had conversations about, when do you work best? What's important to you? He has a radio show on Wednesdays. So just earlier, we switched the time on this. We were going to go at 1 o'clock, and we decided to roll at 2 to make time for Raphael's really wonderful opportunity to have his own radio show in Venezuela. So I think this ability to be in conversation, understanding that we're really trying to do our best. Raphael knows that I appreciate who he is and his attitude and approach to work and his demeanor. He brings a lot of sunshine energy to work. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes I feel like I'm carrying all the weight, and you might feel that too at work. It's really wonderful to be able to say to someone, like, I really need a lift today, and to be able to go back and forth lifting each other up from time to time is really super powerful. So I see lots of people on the call today. I see Brittany, Kevin, Aaron, Curtis, Maria, Alexandra, Kion or Keon. I'm not sure how you say that name. Never seen that and love it. Love to know. Wendy, Matt, if any of you have a question about your relationships and how to improve them, especially if it relates to neurodivergency, or if not, we'd love you to come and join us on stage. I've got a few more thoughts to share with you, but we've got ample time for questions, and we don't need to wait until the end. So please feel free to put your hand up, or let Raphael know by sending him a DM if you'd like to ask a question anonymously. I'm really curious to learn from you. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to hear from you in the corporate world. Do you feel like you can talk about neurodivergency at work? Do you feel like your work understands you? Do you feel like it's possible to have a conversation about what you need at work? What's the environment like out there? I worked for about 15 years in various corporate roles: Toronto, Montreal, Tokyo, anywhere from helping an entrepreneur start a business to being part of a 30,000 person company. So I've had a lot of different roles, and I'm really curious what you're noticing right now out in the work world. Let me share with you now. I want to share, as we're thinking about working well with others and asking others what they need, bias can get in our way in terms of diminishing other people's comfort being themselves and making assumptions about them. So checking our own biases is really important. And there's something called false consensus effect. False consensus effect. And that is simply that we have a tendency to believe that the way we do things is the way everyone should do things. And this can be a really bad assumption, because you might be very singular in your preferences. I spoke to an executive at one of the tech firms here recently, and we were talking about the return to office and his perspective on it. And he said, "Oh, working from home, it was great. I did so much admin work at home, but any real work got done in the office." And I said, "Well, I'm glad we're talking about bias, because I said that could be completely flipped for someone else. They might be able to do real deep thinking work at home and feel like they could just knock off admin work in the office." And that was like an aha moment for that person. And I think that the more we can be in conversation about how we work, the better we can figure out how we want to relate to each other. I'm going to drop a couple of other biases that you might be aware of as well. There's one called status quo bias, and that is the propensity to keep doing what we've been doing because we've been doing it, and it's a lot more energy to actually take that further. So that's harder, and takes some more cognitive load to potentially change things, but it can be really, really well worth it. The third one I want to share with you, and this is why if you're looking at the slides now or watching the video, I'm showing a pair of rose-colored sunglasses. And this is called rosy retrospection. And anybody that's ever had a breakup has definitely gone through this. When you think of an ex and you think, well, they weren't so bad. We had all these lovely moments. That's some rosy retrospection right there. And we can tend to do this about all of our experiences, and that could help. It can help. It can diminish our judgment or affect our judgment of the situation right now. So we talked false consensus effect, we talked status quo bias, and rosy retrospection, which are three biases to be aware of when you're thinking about interacting with others. Uh, Another thought I'd like to leave you with is this thought of expanding inclusivity. You know, we've been blessed to have a greater awareness and a lot more action around inclusivity because of the Me Too movement, because of Black Lives Matter. There are growing groups of awareness now around hidden challenges. And neurodiversity, neurodivergency is right in there because it's often non apparent. And so I urge you to think about what you might not be knowing, what you might not be seeing around you in terms of what challenges are. I lived this not only because of neurodivergency, which you can't see, but also I have an autoimmune illness that I kept quiet for 7 years. I wasn't comfortable talking about it. And then and now, if I'm giving a workshop to a corporation about neurodiversity, inclusivity, hidden illness, all this kind of thing, I will disclose, and people's faces do not believe when I tell them that I have MS. They don't believe. They immediately think wheelchair, and then they look at me and say, how is this possible? And so you don't know what you don't know. And that extends to all of us because a lot of what's going on for people may or may not be disclosed, and a lot is not shared. I think 80% of disabilities are, in fact, invisible in the world. So we're always interacting with people and may not know the full picture. And so erring again in that, or not erring, I mean, landing and anchoring in that attitude of curiosity, leaning into that ask model is really, really a profound way to be. You can catch assumptions you might make about someone's cognitive processing speed, about their mobility ability, about their sensory sensitivity, all of those things. They don't need to be assumptions. We need to actually stay curious and ask about them and build that into our processes. Um, I want to pause again. I want to pause again, and I'm actually going to stop talking for a few seconds just to see if anyone's got a question. Okay, Raphael, did any questions come up on your end?
No, not yet.
Okay. When we were talking about designing space, we had a few questions. When we were talking about managing time, we had a ton of questions. And I'm just going to make a link to managing time now because that is a huge, 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 huge relationship issue. The ability to manage time well. I'm going to relay one story from when I was living in Tokyo. And this was with my, sorry, the cat is now rolling on my keyboard. Ellie, stay over, stay over on your carpet. When I lived in Tokyo, this was back in 98, 99. We had cell phones, but I don't think I had one right at the beginning. So we didn't have an ability to be in touch all the time. And you would go and meet somebody at a train station, for example, and I would say to my then husband, let's meet at 7 o'clock. And I would wait, and it would be 7:10. It would be 7:15. It would be 7:20. It would be 7:25. And I would be flip flopping between worried, angry, worried, annoyed, angry. And I realized there was no good. Worrying was not going to do anything, but it was hard to stay really calm and relaxed in that moment. So I decided to sort of set some boundaries and guidelines for if this happens again, I'm going to wait half an hour And then I'm just going to move on to what I need to do because it's really hard to be on time. In Toronto now, we need a half an hour buffer, just like we did in Tokyo back in the day. And so, what was interesting was having the boundary, being really clear about the consequence. My then partner was never late again. He modified his behavior and he was on time. He was within that window. Always, he was never late again. And it took that kind of clarity, knowing myself and knowing what was happening to me. I didn't want to turn into an angry person. So figuring this out was a real relationship booster around how we manage time. So I just wanted to drop that one because the concept of managing time was such a hot topic for us on the Fishbowl Live. I just thought I'd bring that thought back as it relates to relationship. I want to drop another thought for you around creating safe spaces for neurodivergent professionals, safe spaces to be in and safe spaces to speak up. And I talk about having three safeties. So you've probably all heard of psychological safety, which means that you feel safe enough to speak up. You feel like people are not going to just Raphael, stop talking. We don't have time for this. We need to feel like it's okay to say, I have something important to share, and that we're going to make time to listen to each other. So that's psychological safety. You won't be attacked. You'll be made room for your opinion. We've experienced through the pandemic great attention to physiological safety, cleaning surfaces, wearing masks, air purification, opening the windows, all of that. We've looked at physiological and psychological safety, but I don't know many environments that have looked at neurological safety. And with neurological safety, I'm talking about making sure we're in environments that do not tax our nervous systems and our cognitive processing. And I'm looking at working with more and more organizations on helping them find those points where their product, service, environment, or experience are not helpful for neurodivergent professionals and really need some tweaks to be more comfortable so that we can operate more effectively. So, if anybody's got products that they celebrate and they think, oh my gosh, they did such a good job of creating the environment, the culture, the space, the service, the product, let us know at Clare Kumar. You can drop me a tweet if you still are on Twitter or X. You can reach me on Instagram, LinkedIn. Absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably where I spend a lot of time. But really, we're in Fishbowl. I want you to reach out to me in Fishbowl because I am there every week. I am there in Glassdoor posting in the work life bowl. And I'm asking questions and would love to hear from you. But feel free to connect with me there and ask a question as well. I'm curious about this aspect of neurological safety and what you're finding in your workplace, and if there's something that you would ask for, if there's a product. I just had KitchenAid appliance fellow here this morning, and we were talking about my new induction stove, and I said your new induction stove is not accessible from a sensory sensitivity point of view because there's an alarm on the stove top that it doesn't matter what you put on it. You put any kind of weight on the control panel, and it gives you a startling alarm in a really shrill, offensive tone. But that may be okay once you know about it. There was no information about the alarm, what it means, what triggers it, whether it can be avoided, like nothing. So I was cursing my stove on the daily for the past month until I finally learned what's triggering it. So neurological safety needs to be a thing in design, and I'm really excited to be working with organizations on bringing this kind of view to it. I have couple more thoughts for you and really again want to invite your questions. One of the things, so we talked about first of all understanding what we need. We talked a little bit about speaking up and naming the emotions that you're feeling to calm down so you can articulate yourself as well as possible. We talked about asking others and creating the three safeties and dealing with bias. And I'm going to move into the fourth step. But before that, I do that, I just want to check with Raphael again. Maybe you want to remind everybody of where we are in this series and let me know if we have any questions.
Yes, of course. This is Proactivity for Neurodivergent Professionals, and today we're talking about building better relationships with Clare Kumar, founder of Happy Space, experienced executive coach specializing in productivity and inclusivity. This is the third talk in the series, and we're eager to actually talk to you and hear your questions and or hear your opinions about it, about the talk, about the topic, about everything. We like to talk to you.
True enough. We absolutely do. It makes it actually a ton more fun. And so here's one thing I do is I ask for what I need, right? So I am going to say I will feel like this is a win if we get some live conversation. And I know that some of what I'm sharing at least is resonating with you. Could somebody come on and share with us right now? Is there something that you heard today that's valuable, or do you have a question? I'd love to see who would like to come. Is it Tucci? Is it Eduardo? Danielle? Colleen? Who's going to join us and let us know? Let me know one thing that you've taken away today from what we've said so far. And just so we know how to do that, I think you should have a button at the bottom of your screen that says raise hand. And you should be able to click on that. And then we will see you on the stage and can admit you and invite you into conversation. Hey, Valentina, if you're listening, I'm wondering if you have anything that's come up for you that you've noticed.
Oh, it seems like we actually have a question from Daniel, so I can actually just move him to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks, Valentina. And Daniel, welcome. Welcome. Thanks so much. Please let me know what's on your mind.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, definitely. Very well.
Perfect. It's kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about being comfortable in the workplace and what can I do? I, about a year and a half ago, left the workplace on a medical leave for some diagnoses. And part of what came out of that was executive function disorder. And that was like looking back on my struggles at work prior to my diagnosis, I realized that it made a lot of sense. But my previous leader told me that I was unsustainable the way that I worked for her organization, and suggested I look for a new role. And then I went out due to the medical issues, and I'm just going back now. While I was out, they had to fill my role for business continuity purposes, but I'll be returning in June and looking for new opportunities within the company that align with my skills. And I just don't know how to, I guess, use what I've learned about myself to convey that to a hiring manager or ask for an accommodation or what the good point in that is. I did a lot of dialectical and cognitive behavioral therapy for the last year, so I'm good like regulating my emotions, but I'm just not clear about what's a good suggestion to get back into things.
Oh, Daniel, thanks so much for sharing and congratulations on moving through this journey and learning so much. What's coming up for me is to, first of all, when you're looking for opportunities, looking for work that really plays into your strengths and really anchoring in that positivity for who you are and what you can do well. And I think when you can really connect on that level, it's then talking about how how you plan on dealing with or what challenges might come up and what might be helpful with the respect to those challenges. And my gut feel is that you want to sell someone on your strengths, and then in the interview, as you might get into the interview, think about some of these challenges that happen for you, but have a real strength corollary to it, so that there's, while this might be at play, this other attribute, they go hand in hand, but the stellar ways of thinking and the value add is really there. Can you, when you think about your strengths and challenges, does that make sense to sort of have an inventory of what you're naturally inclined to do, and then finding language to talk about a challenge in such a way that you've got a way to mitigate it?
I think, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. It's like you've asked me to do something, I'll do it. You've given me a deadline, it'll be done by then, and then you're upset with me for not providing updates. So my communication skills to others could be a lot greater when, in fact, I am, ahead of time, under budget, whatever it may be. I just haven't provided any update because the deadline was the requirement, not like a timeline of updates. So I always find that to be a bit of a struggle when I'm working on projects. And yeah, I guess it's kind of hard. That's one of my struggles, is to say, I'm already working on this. You already told me. I don't need you to tell me again. But on the other side of it, my strength in that is me sticking to the timeline or ahead of it and making sure everything is completed meticulously, etc.
So I love what you're bringing up, because what you're talking about is actually, there's a great body of work around this, and it's called the Curtin Adaptation Innovation Theory. It's about 50 years old, and it looks at propensity to organize and our different styles of organizing. And some people love a lot of structure, and some people are like, no, don't give me any guidance. And one of the things we can do when we're new at working with someone is really understand where they're coming from and also disclose what we need. So Raphael and I bounced into this yesterday, because I said, Raphael, I think I want to turn this into a blog post. And off Raphael went to turn it into a blog post. And then when we sat down to review it, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. By blog post, I just meant set up the conversation and then we'll put the transcript in. I didn't mean spend, all of your energy creating a new way of saying the things that we've already said. So I think there's what I was talking a lot about today is the how of work, and having a very good understanding of when, if I have a project, I like this degree of granularity and this frequency of check-in. That makes me feel good. And it might be different for the person you're working with, or it might be the same. But if you have a conversation, you can then come to some kind of compromise that makes you feel good, and it's clearly articulated, and you can both bounce along touching points through the work as you go, not feeling like you have to read somebody's mind, and not feeling like, oh God, well, you already asked me, but you know what? They might need that touch point. So through understanding what each other needs, I think you can go a long way to working with a lot more people by understanding this difference in personality around the propensity to want structure in the way we work or not. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So good luck with that. I'm wishing you great luck in looking for an opportunity and then being in conversation. And I don't know many leaders that actually say, can we talk about how you work? So you might want to bring that up and say, it really is helpful for me to have a conversation about how we get this done. I understand the task, but the how about it, if we can agree on that, that's going to make this go really smooth. I liken it to a painter plastering a wall before they paint. And if you can make, or making a road really smooth. Otherwise you go down that road and there might be potholes and speed bumps and whatnot, and you could have had a lot smoother journey if you have some talk about how.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was just on one other thing about it, and I think it kind of
Mhm.
ties into this, is the CEO of Duolingo. I think he was the CEO or the creator of Duolingo. One of the things he states specifically is that his best hours are between 11 and 3.
Yeah.
So his bias is catch me between 11 and 3. That's when I'm working my best. And I
Yeah.
think that we, as neurodivergent people, should communicate that more as well. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
good in the morning, but I'm great at 9 o'clock at night, So
Absolutely. So that work style profile I mentioned, clarekumar.com/work style profile. It's right on the website under Happy Space. And it's free. I would really encourage you right now to do that, because going through the exercise, you go through the questionnaire, it'll take about 15 minutes. And then the exercise of turning that into one page of what do you want to be reminded of yourself, and then what might you want to share. Really, really powerful. That's your opportunity to decide what you want someone else to know about you and put it in a way that you have time to think about what you want to put out there and revise it at any time. So I highly encourage you to use that. And if you do, please let me know if it's helpful for you. My whole goal with all of this work is to, you'll see it on my website, stop the unintentional squandering of human potential. And what you described to me is a total example of just not getting a right fit or not getting the right communication to allow someone who's really talented to really make a contribution. So I'm really excited for you. Please check out the work style profile and do keep in touch, Danielle. I'm really thrilled we had the time to chat today. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome, Daniel. Thank you so much. I want to lay down one other thought for you. And when we're thinking about working with others, and we've identified our needs, we have identified their needs. We then negotiate how we're going to work together. But a lot of what's missing, I think, in our working world today is we're not acknowledging what we're asking for. And I want you for a second to just think of somebody who might be living most of their life, daily life, in a wheelchair. And if we're expecting that person to come to the office, what's the ask we're making for them in terms of what they have to spend time and energy on? And so the invitation is really generally to say, to respect the resources that someone has to spend and use to be able to do something. And with the resources, I have a little analogy to help you remember them. I say, don't run out of steam. And STEAM stands for space, time, energy, attention, and money. Space, time, energy, attention, and money. And I know we have to, as neurodivergent people, have to regulate our energy very carefully, manage our time. Time is limited for everyone, and our attention in particular, our ability for focus. And I think the working world does not really understand just how much good focus time we have in a day. Follow Cal Newport's work. Steven Spielberg, I think, writes 4 hours a day. We expect more than we should in most types of work out of the human brain, and we need to allow an ebb and flow between rest, real deep focus, and mind wandering time. We need all of that. And so I want you to think about what's being asked of you and what you're asking of yourself, and to remember to respect those resources. Don't run out of steam. I also, one last thought for you. If you do complete that work style profile, which again is free for everyone, and I'm really hoping you'll take advantage of it, you'll get a few emails afterwards, not many, because I'm really, really not good at email marketing. I hate to say it, right? But it's not my thing. But I have sent an invitation to, if you want to take this kind of thinking and work it through with your team, neurodivergent or not, doesn't matter. It's for all kinds of teams to be able to work better together. There's a really concise program I've put together that builds on the work style profile, and it's called Total Teamwork. Total Teamwork. That is on the website as well. You will see it if you go to clarekumar.com/fishbowl and scroll down to today's presentation. There's a link to Total Teamwork there for you. And that is a program that you can send the webpage to your team leader and say, hey, you know what? I heard this presentation. This is someone that can help us focus on the how of work and have respect for everyone on the team, including the leader. The leader often has an expectation that they're carrying the weight of everything. And I think it's really important that we build compassion infused compromise in the way we're working together. Like I said, love to be in touch with you. We maybe have time for one more question, I think, if there's anyone. Raphael, did anyone come up for you?
Anonymously, no.
No, I just saw my box light up, but I think maybe it was a connection, so that's okay. Last call for anyone to join us on stage right now and pop in a question. Otherwise, I am going to wish you all well in your journey at work and invite you to really participate in this series. The first talk I gave was all about designing your space to be effective, and we had lots of great questions in there. There's a replay available. Also, the second one we did was on managing time. This conversation, of course, was all about building better relationships and a lot to do with self management and then finding the words to ask for what you need. That's coming up in depth on June 12th. So if you've got a situation and you're looking for how to express it and what might be a different way to share it, that's a great time to join us. And the last one in June is going to be all around building habits, building happy habits that stick. So it can be really tough to integrate some new thing to do in our lives, but we're going to talk about some ways that through coaching hundreds of people, I've been able to really have people find habits that become part of the way they do things. So I want to thank you all for participating today. Brittany, Krista, Thaddeus, Colleen, Danielle. Thank you, Daniel, again for coming on and chatting with me. It feels so good to be in conversation with you. Thanks to Patty, Diane, Stacy, Damien. Great to see so many of you here. Please connect with me on Fishbowl in the community, in the Work-Life Bowl. I'm there every week posting. And if you have a question, by all means, you can reach me at Clare Kumar in the socials. It's been a real pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.